Continuing on the mind hack of Mr. Tim Ferriss. So, that's where we begin. Now, we want to add something in here. If you're going to accomplish work, you need a timeline. Okay, so that's your timeline. That happens over time. Any project that you do, any thinking that you do, tends to go through a timeline. Now, what's again unique with Tim, if you notice Tim, there's a couple different variations here that go on here. For example, a lot of people who cannot adopt Tim's way of perceiving, okay, run something that we call duration. In other words, they participate in this whole timeline. In other words, they see something and they have to talk it out completely before they feel good. Okay, so they've got this going the whole way through, done. Now Tim, on the other hand, does something pretty cool. Tim runs frequency. If something is going to be real to Tim, he's going to poke it, he's going to experiment with it, he's going to keep touching it again and again and again and again and again. You can hear this in everything that the guy does. So, by the way, someone who has a ton of duration will tend to talk slow. They will tend to draw things out. They'll tend to be involved with the whole darn thing. If we look at this a little bit differently, Tim Ferriss, he's got a couple things going on. One of them is like this. This implies frequency. Okay, so Tim will check in here, 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 here. And if you listen to him, he'll do something again and 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 again. Or he'll do something else, something different, something more, something else. Okay, this is what Tim does. He's always accessing through frequency. He doesn't sit still for a long time and talk and have his words just, Tim will start to talk and he'll change direction a little bit and he'll talk some more and he'll change direction again and he'll talk some more and he'll take you through all the steps, but while you're going through all the steps he'll toss in these little side journeys which are pretty darn cool. This is what Tim does. Now, why does outsourcing work so well for him? What Tim does is he outsources these chunks. And he outsources this stuff. Now he just doesn't outsource it. Okay. Now what's cool, if he were to do all this stuff, literally he would have to be involved with the entire timeline. What he does is he pays people to be involved with the timeline where he prefers not to be. Now he talks about it in his book, saying anything that you can get done cheaply compared to your hourly rate, you outsource. But he also outsources stuff, and I can guarantee this by listening to him. If he doesn't get a rise out of it, if he doesn't get juice out of it, if it's not like that roller coaster thing that he loves, you can just tell. If it's this kind of stuff that goes over time through the whole thing, he outsources that. Now what's really cool, Tim can put a few moments in here, a few moments in here, checking and directing, checking and directing, checking and directing. And he can, keep adding in more little spots where he outsources more. And Tim gets to experience more frequency in life, and he gets to experience these intense up and downs, which is pretty darn cool. Tim is one of the few human beings who's acknowledged who and what he is. Tim likes this rush that comes from going back and forth with visual and kinesthetic. He sees something, he's got to poke it. He sees something, he's got to poke it. Meanwhile, he's developing a strategy. Meanwhile, he gives little side effects, little reports. This is what I discovered. You can hear it. Now what's nice, visual people tend to talk fast. They tend to have the breathing up toward the top of the chest like I am during most of this. This is what Tim does. A lot of visual. Visual not only shows up differently for him, but it being right next to kinesthetic, he has a lot more visual than most people do. Most people have a ton of auditory. Tim has a lot of visual and kinesthetic access, and he goes back and forth between the two. So, Tim has a higher percentage of visual, and his visual sits right next to kinesthetic. Most people have visual, they express it slowly through auditory, in sequence, over time, and eventually get to feel good. Tim gets to have more ups and downs than most people could ever imagine. Okay? And while he's doing that, that's giving him energy. This is energy. This is how it works. So, we'll be back in just a moment with a little bit more on the Tim Ferriss Mind Hack.